So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Good evening, this is Life Changers with Brock Tranter and Brent Quick. Usually Ian Bauer, but he's away this week. He's got a massive event happening with the Port to Pub Swim, which is facilitating a whole bunch of school kids going across, and his safety kayaker for a group this year. So he's tied up yet again, but Brent Quick is filling in for him. And we have an interesting guest for you this evening. He's a great bloke that we know, good friend of mine, and his name is Matt Bright. How you going tonight, Matt?
Good, thanks, Mr. Tranter.
Yeah, you can drop the mister. This is the radio. Okay, now Matt Bright, you got a nice Aussie accent there, which is a bit strange for what we see around these days. Were you born and raised in Australia?
Yes, I was born in Western Australia, Subiaco, St John of God, mate. Yeah.
Good local one. All right, Matt, we're just going to get into a few little things about you, just so people can get acquainted before we get into the juicy stuff. So, you're a bit of a family man. I know your wife and kids. Can you just give us a bit of a rundown on the family situation there?
So I've got two boys, Seth and Xavier, who are full of energy and full of life, which I just love. My wife and I, we've been together for 23 years. We've been married for 22 years. We got married at the age of 18. So, a lot of things were going against us, but people, didn't think we could make it, but we totally made it. I got engaged with her at the age of 17. I asked her to marry me after like 2 weeks of only knowing her. And just popped the question. I knew that she was the right one, and you went from there.
That is so good. The real life Romeo and Juliet, but with a slightly longer ending than the movie. It's just fantastic to see love comes in all shapes and sizes, and if you see these two together now, you just know that it is true love. It's 22 years of marriage. That's right, 22 years of marriage. He's only 24 years old. No, how old are you, Matt?
I've just turned 40, mate, the big 40.
Wow, so that's over half your life now with significant other Rosie. It's just fantastic to see true love, and you guys have come such a long way. So let's just talk a little bit about your interest. Now, music has played a big part of your life. Do you want to share a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I remember back in the days when hair metal was really big, and my sister introduced me to Bon Jovi, the band back then. And I remember the album Slippery When Wet. It was a really cool album back in the hair metal days, and my sister told me that they were coming. And I was in year 5, and I went to my very first concert, and it was the Slippery When Wet tour. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my entire life at that point, but it was so cool to see a live band then, and it sparked something in me, and it really brought an interest to me. From there I went into listening to bands like Faith No More, and I really loved the bass in Faith No More because it was really funky, and I said to Mum that I wanted to get a bass, and I wanted to get as good as the bass player from Faith No More and Red Hot Chili Peppers. It kind of went from there.
That is awesome. You still play bass now?
Yeah, I do still play bass now. I try to focus on more of the tapping techniques. I got into bands like Primus, who I heavily do a lot of the tapping. But yeah, more funk, so slap and tap. And yeah, I've been playing bass for a while. I've had bands, done tours, all that sort of thing.
Youth Jam Radio Perth.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
I guess we've actually always worked together. It's really weird. We haven't spent much time apart. Apart from like the Euro tours and stuff like that, we spend all of our time together. We work together. We go home together in the one car. We live our lives together. I just think that we've got this amazing bond as a husband and wife.
Absolutely, and to be 22 years and still be going like and see you guys as in love with each other as ever. Like it certainly is building your relationship all this time together, which it's unusual, I think, in this day and age. But I feel exactly the same way with my wife. Similar interest. Not that this show's about me; it's about you. But it certainly rings some bells within myself. So media, you have obviously some influences that influence how the sort of media that you've made, the documentaries and short films. What sort of genre is your favourite? What sort of people, directors and that have had a big part in your choices along the way?
It's funny, when I first met my wife, I used to watch really bad films. I used to watch a lot of blockbuster films, and I'm not into blockbusters anymore. So I used to be like a fan of like the Michael Bay kind of films, and the big Jerry Bruckheimer films. But I just can't do them anymore. It's when you find auteurs and directors that just have changed cinema for you. You kind of like throw away the bad films and go into great films. So I guess for me, my favourite directors would be people like David Fincher. I love his ability to create great characters and suspense films. Quentin Tarantino, I love his use of shots. I love his dialogue. He's like the king of dialogue. I love his narratives, the way he draws out his narrative and in the scenes of the dialogue. I've always just been a massive fan of Tarantino since I first was shown Pulp Fiction by my sister. I remember that day I came home and my sister said, I've rented out this movie and you've got to see it. And I watched Pulp Fiction, and it kind of like changed my life. And I was like, wow, that's how film could be made. And then recently, another director I really love is Wes Anderson. I love his use of symmetry in his shots and the way he can just get everything symmetrical. And I love his use of colour palettes. This guy chooses 5 colours in his film, and he just sticks with those 5 colours throughout the film. It's just beautiful to watch.
Wow, you can just tell the passion in your voice right there about movies and whatnot. I do love chatting movies with you. I am a little bit of an amateur when it comes to that, because I do like the Michael Bay big explosions. Bad Boys, that's some of my favourite movies. Transformers, probably just because I love Transformers when I was a kid. Dinosaurs in the modern age, how can you go wrong with that? Dark Side of the Moon, it just keeps going, doesn't it? It's brilliant. So, favourite movie at the moment?
Ooh, favourite movie at the moment. Ooh. I can't ever go past Donnie Darko. It's not any one of those directors that I mentioned. There's something about the movie Donnie Darko that I just truly love. I love the characters in that movie. I love the use of playing with timelines. But I also love this French film, and everyone should know it, is Amélie, by a director named Jean-Pierre Jeunet. And he's just phenomenal. He does beautiful love stories, but with modern twists, and plays around with colour grading. And he's another guy like Wes Anderson that has a set tone for his film with colours and just plays around with them. So yeah, Amélie and Donnie Darko.
Youth Jam Radio Perth.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Go have a watch. So you've made some of your own stuff along the way. What's your favourite genre that you've dabbled with?
Favourite genre that I've dabbled with? Actually, documentary. I actually really love documentary. There's something about telling someone else's story. My wife and I did we got a $100,000 grant from Lottery West, and we did it on the rebuilding of the Dyfken. So we travelled from Esperance all the way up to Shark Bay, and we covered the voyage of the Dyfken. So that was really cool. Even got to go on the Dyfken ourselves and speak to some really interesting characters who knew a lot about the Dutch settlement. So documentaries, I always had a fascination with documentary. Even I've just watched the recent Kurt Cobain documentary, and I find that quite intriguing. So yeah.
Fantastic. We're just plugging through one at the moment in Outdoor Ed class. I don't know if you've seen it. Won an Oscar this year, Free Solo, about Alex Honnold and his climbing If you haven't seen that one, I'm going to get your opinion on it. It's only an hour and 40 of your life, and you'll appreciate every minute of it, I'm sure. We'll move on from media just for the minute. We'll come back to some of your other pursuits in that. But you've also got another hobby. Now, this is, some people might think this is a little bit over the top, aggressive, hurting people, that sort of stuff, but it's also seen as a matter of discipline and a lot of time and effort put into the techniques, and this is of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So how did you get into this form of martial art?
It would go all the way back to the day when I first started karate. So I started karate as a child. I did it for like 7 years, and I remember getting into an altercation at school and realizing that karate didn't work in an altercation. I then had other interests. I did a bit of boxing, which is really cool, a bit of kickboxing. I tried Aikido. I realized straight away that wasn't going to work in any sort of situation. And then I had a friend come over, and he was from New Zealand, and he was doing like American college wrestling, so like they do at university. And he said, "Oh, do you want to just have a quick grapple?" And he just absolutely dominated me. I had nothing. I thought I was a good fighter, but he just controlled me the whole time. I couldn't get out any of the positions. And I said, "Oh, so what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I do American college wrestling. But you should probably check out the UFC and see what they're doing on the ground there." And they're doing a thing called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I found a club. I signed up, and I'm now 11 years in, and I'm a purple belt. And I train at 80-20 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's my biggest other part of my life, I would say, even bigger than music. I live for Jiu-Jitsu. It's changed my life around completely. When I'm not with my wife and my family, I'm thinking about Jiu-Jitsu. I'm thinking about new techniques. I'm thinking about how I can better my students. So it's another major part of my life.
Jam-packed with all the biggest hits. This is Youth Jam Radio.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
So the wax on, wax off didn't work in reality. It's another Hollywood thing, but the wrestling on the ground did. Now we see you walking around in your tights. Is that what we call them?
You could call them tights. I have fight shorts, I have arashi, and I have, so like basically tights, and it's just to keep the sweat from always dripping and going into your opponent's mouth when you're grappling. So that can be a down point, but you get over the grappling part pretty quickly, and the sweat and stuff like that. It's high energy, it's intense, it's a cat and mouse game. And it's almost like chess. You make a move, then they make a move, and eventually someone's going to make the wrong move, and then they're done.
Tapped out or blacked out. Either way, the win is there. Now, brown belt. Can you just explain that for the folks out there like myself who have no idea what level the brown belt is? Is that like Mr. Miyagi sort of level, or sorry, purple?
Yeah, I'm purple.
Yeah, sorry. Is that after or before the brown?
The purple belt is before the brown. So in adults, we have white, blue, brown, and black. And people generally don't get to brown and black easily. Each belt is actually really hard. So in karate, taekwondo, things like that, I've seen people get their black belts in 2 years. I am now 11 years in, and I'm on my purple belt, working towards my brown belt. But I got my blue belt after 2 years, so, on the mats every day, basically, training hard. Got my blue belt, and then another 3-4 years I got my purple belt, and I've just been working towards that. So one of the things that I try to do is I try not to get my kids, my students, I like to call them my kids because I see them as much as my kids, but I don't like to do belts with them. I don't like to do belts until they're ready for adult belts, because I want them to have that inside motivation rather than looking for that outside motivation. I want them to get better at jiu-jitsu. I don't want them to focus on a belt. So by the time they hit year 12 and 17, if they're ready for their blue belt, they'll get it. If they're not, they can come back afterwards and continue to train and try on the blue belt with me.
Man, that is such an important philosophy, isn't it? The internal motivations of things as opposed to chasing the externals. I've got a couple of kids myself, students, not my kids, but they're doing the Duke of Edinburgh. A lot of people say, what's the purpose of doing this Duke of Edinburgh thing? And it's all about that internal motivation rather than getting the award at the end and that sort of thing. It's difficult to explain, but it's such a valuable bit of advice there for the young people out there chasing stuff. So we're going to have a break at this point in time. We're going to play a tune for you, and we'll be back shortly.
Radio with a positive twist. Youth Jam Radio.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Okay, welcome back. We've got a new segment coming out, and we don't actually have a catch tune for it. So if you're listening out there on the radio waves or the app or however you listen, we want some input from you. So this game is all about our guest, which is Matt Bright this evening, legend that he is, and we're going to give him 60 seconds. That's right, he's going to have a whole minute, and his aim is to talk about something of his passions for that whole entire 60 seconds without pause, without break. We want to see how influential and how knowledgeable he can be in this topic. Okay, so for those people, the help we need is every game show has its own little jingle, has its own little intro, has its own little song that comes on, and everyone knows that it's time to play that game. And this is something we want to play with each of our guests from now on that are up to play it. So if you have an idea, we can't breach copyright rules and all that, so it'll have to be your own work. You can email that through to inquiries@youthjamradio.com. inquiries@youthjamradio.com, and we'll get Isaac onto selecting the best one that comes through, and we can when you hear that radical tune, we'll know that it's time to play the game. Now, young Brent Quick here, you guys may know him from one of the previous shows. He's filling in for Ian Bauer today. His if you haven't heard his radio segment with Bauer, then you need to go look that one up. I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Get into him, you'll understand him a lot more through there. And we're about to give Matt the topic of the day. Okay, so Brent, we're going to give Matt just 30 seconds now to think about it while we talk about it. What is his topic?
All right, today's topic of 60 Seconds of Power is the director Quentin Tarantino.
That's right, folks. You're starting to think about Quentin Tarantino yourself. You're jumping onto the Wikipedia because that's where we get all our knowledge for. Matt Bright is going to update all your Wikipedias after this. He's got 60 seconds. Are you ready, Matt? Matt's ready. Okay, we're giving him the mic, and he's got 60 seconds on Quentin Tarantino.
Go. All right. The great thing about Quentin Tarantino, I love his disjointed narratives. I love the non-linear format. He uses it in most of his films. Most superbly used in Pulp Fiction. He has many different storylines in that. I fell in love with that film just because you could see all the different storylines forming together, and in the end, it told a great story piece. The great thing I fell in love with in one of his films called Inglourious Beep, I won't say the word, it had this amazing dialogue scene between Christoph Waltz and I don't remember the French actor's name, but it had this great scene and this tension, and it was like a cat and mouse game where they sat there and they had this discussion, and you knew as an audience that Christoph Waltz knew where the Jews were hidden underneath the floorboard. You also knew that the French man knew that... Oh, time.
Well, I was getting hooked in there. I was going to let you go for another 3 minutes. Looked like you had nailed that and you could have kept going forever. Well done. That was a nice quick one. So there you go, folks. That's our first section of Power done. Matt Bright did it beautifully. If you have a intro tune for us or an intro beat idea, could be completely without music and just your voice, inquiries at youthjamradio.com. Send them through. Inundate Isaac. He's got nothing to do. It's not like he's in year 12 studying for anything, getting assignments in. He has time. He wants to hear your ideas. Thanks, Matt. That was beautiful.
Youth Jam Radio.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Now, Matt, it's your turn to give Brent one. Let's see if Brent can do his 60 seconds of power. Insert theme tune now. No, that's rubbish. Come do better than that. All right, Matt, let's pass it over to Brent.
I give you the topic of Australian soccer.
All right, Australian soccer, huge. Obviously, the world's greatest sport, in my opinion. It's the biggest sport in the world, and how it's changed so many young lives, so many participants, so much push behind the sport for young people to get involved. I think it's growing tremendously. I think coaches and players are really starting to adopt a really elite style of the game. The A-League is tremendous. It's coming up. Perth Glory, obviously my team choice, living here in Perth. Love that we're at the top of the table now, I believe.
You've got to talk about Harry.
Harry, we were talking about Harry.
Isn't that the guy that plays really good for Australia?
Harry, cool. I don't know. My guy, obviously Tim Cahill on the Wheat Bix box. I love my Wheat Bix. How many can you eat? Everyone needs to write down in the emails how many Wheat Bix they can eat, like Timmy Cahill. Alright, that's my minute.
You still got 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 and Brent Quick will be playing for Australia one day, and we'll forgive him for that 10 seconds. Alright, Matt wins this round of 60 seconds of power. Well done, Matt. And remember, send those things through to inquiries at youthjamradio.com. Alright, while we're still on this theme of sports here, Matt, we have entered into the debate over time. I've always been the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan fan, but you have a differing opinion. Tell us about your NBA history. Who's the legend?
Larry Bird, for sure.
Okay, you're all about the white guys that can't jump but have dominated the game. Now, tell us why you're in love with Larry Bird.
His 3 points, his three-pointer, he's so phenomenal. You know, back in the day, I know the game's changed now and you've got a lot more athletic guys out there nailing a lot more three-pointers, but back in the day, Larry Bird was the man nailing the three-pointers for the Boston Celtics. I will always have my brother to thank for introducing me to NBA back in the day when I loved NBA. I'm not a massive fan of it anymore, but you know, back in the day you had Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, you know, the John Stockton, Karl Malone. You know, those guys were legends.
Those guys were actually tough, not like these days. The game is a little bit soft, but that's okay. You're a BJJ fighter, you're a music buff, you're a media man, family man. We know how you love it. Nice and tough and rough, and that's how the NBA used to be. Not like these days, just throwing it out there. But it is a good spectacle to watch, and Philadelphia 76ers are going to take the crown this year. Big call. All right, we're going to switch to another song now, and then we're going to come back with the final segment for this evening.
A positive alternative for Perth's youth. Youth Jam Radio. Perth's positive alternative.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Okay, welcome back. That was a fun segment. Remember, send through your ideas for the jingle to inquiries at youthjamradio.com. And if you vote for Brent in that, you can send it through, but 90% of people will vote for Matt Bright winning that segment. It was an awesome 60 seconds of Quentin Tarantino. So we're going to move into what this segment's actually about now, Matt, and that is life changes. And you have talked about some of the influence that you've had growing up in teachers that were both good and bad, teachers that didn't give you enough time and build that relationship with you, and teachers that did, and how that's actually influenced where you are in life right now, which is fantastic stuff. So we'll just go into the media side of things first, because that's what you teach primarily at school. So how, through those influences, what do you now hope to achieve in the school setting with the media, both in school, out of school stuff?
I just I try to build my kids from day dot. So my wife and we've designed this, what we consider an amazing program. So you start, in year 7, and you get a taster of it, and you build them from there, and you go all the way up to year 12, whether you're doing ATAR or general. But you walk away with an amazing set of skills, having used an amazing set of equipment that we've developed over the time here at Quins. But I guess the big thing for the game, for changing lives, is that, I get here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and most days I don't leave till 4 or 5. My room's open, recess, lunch. And those kids can come in and they can work on their projects anytime. They can get my help, my wife's help, because our rooms are connecting now, which is amazing. We can walk through each other's doors and team teach. We both have different strengths. So I find that we're always there to help these kids, but not just help them with their work. Sometimes these kids come in and they just need a little extra TLC, or they need to talk to someone. And I've been through some stuff in my life. My wife's been through some stuff in my life, and we do have life experience. And we're able to help a lot of these kids out who just need to have a chat, or even just a safe place to sit at recess and lunch.
Absolutely, and that safe place you talk about, that's so important, isn't it? Because we see chaplaincy come through schools, but it's really about connecting with kids and who they're comfortable talking with. They sometimes the chaplain's good, sometimes they'll have their favourite teacher, that sort of stuff. But you're connecting on a deeper level through the vehicle, I guess, of media. So they can come in, they can work on their projects, have a chat to yourself or Rosie. It's fantastic. So if kids come in and sometimes the stuff they could imagine would be pretty deep sort of stuff. What's the sort of process there that you'd go through?
Just try to listen to them, be there for them, understand them, share with them, your experiences, how you've dealt with it. But best, lead them in the right direction, point them to the right people that they can speak to if they need more help. But I think just being there for them and actually listening to them is sometimes all kids need from a teacher or anybody. Actually, it's just that they need to be heard. Sometimes, busy parents or busy lifestyle outside of school, they don't always get heard, and my room and my wife's room is a place where kids can come and sit and they can have a chat, and they know that we'll listen to them.
That's so powerful, isn't it? Just listening can be much more healing, I guess, or helping them in their next step than it is to actually offer them advice. They just need to get it out, process it themselves, and then they kind of decide themselves what the next best step for them is to do.
Music that will get you up and grooving. Youth Jam Radio.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night can make you shine.
This is Life Changes with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
A radiant light, you were made to rise.
So that's fantastic. It's so good that you do that, that you can have that relationship with kids, that the school supports that. It's a magical thing that you've got going on. So you're also involved in some after-school stuff with the BJJ. So can you just explain, what's available and what you offer there?
So I run a program after school that's completely free. It's Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We train from 2:45 to 4 o'clock. And in that we run takedowns, We'll run a technique, so that technique might be a submission, it might be a certain position, it might be how to escape a submission or escape a position. But I run that 3 days a week. I've seen the differences that it makes in both boys and girls, and that it does change lives.
Absolutely, and I've seen you outside recently because the weather's been good. I've seen you out on the grass there. You've got all sorts of age groups, and the thing that strikes me the most is that you've got students coming back. They've finished high school, they're still coming back, they're volunteering their time to help out with the coaching of the younger kids. They obviously see the benefits in it as well. So that's a great sort of mentoring thing, I guess, you've got going on there. So BJJ, it's a unique, I guess it's a sport, it's not a team sport. So you've been involved, or you've seen the team sporting thing. From your perspective of this being more of an individual sport, are there still the benefits that we know about team sports, like interacting with people, like learning to be part of a team, self-discipline, letting teams down, all that sort of stuff? How does that work on the perspective of more of an individualised sort of a sport?
Although it's an individual sport, I also see my club as a team. What I like to always reiterate is if there's been like a bit of an aggression by a student towards another student, or he or she's been aggressive towards other students, I will always sit the whole class down at the end and address the whole class rather than the individual. And I'll always let them know that we are all teammates here, and that although we are going for a submission and our goal is to make your person tap, that we need training partners. And without our training partners, we have no team. You can't train on your own to the level that you need to. So I do consider it mainly an individual sport, but definitely you need your teammates, because without your teammates, how are you going to learn?
Absolutely. And you need those guys that are better than you, so that you can actually learn. So you see the young kids coming through, I see like the year 7s there fighting against some of the older kids. How do you rev them up to understand that they're not going to win, but they're going to benefit from that?
I always say that you're going to get good by the amount of time that you put on the mat. The thing about with jiu-jitsu, it's a really good indicator of your ego. It will destroy your ego. Anything that you think that you have of an ego, it will be knocked out of you really quickly. It's really humbling, because you think you might be the big dog. You think just because I'm a purple belt doesn't mean that sometimes my students aren't going to tap me out. I've got 4 blue belts under me that come back and coach, and have 2 of them are now 21, and they graduated quite a while ago now, and they often catch me with submissions, and you have to just be able to let go of that ego and be able to move on with that. Otherwise, you are going to walk away from that sport, and you won't be coming back.
Absolutely.
Youth Jam Radio, Perth Positive Alternative.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
So it is about bouncing back after those things. Such good life lessons in that as well. Like you see so many kids these days, they try something, if they don't get it right, they just quit. They don't want to persevere. They don't want to accept that you're not going to get things right the first time. You have to try it over and over and over again to get it right. Linking this all back to your passion of media and things. I've watched a cartoon series. I'm going to admit it right now on radio, that Dragon Ball Z has actually influenced a fair amount of my attitude towards that. So young Goku in Dragon Ball, I watched it while I was in Japan, funny enough. I thought when I was in Japan, you may as well watch a Japanese cartoon, and what better cartoon is there than the original Dragon Ball. Goku's a kid. He just had this, passion to find people that he couldn't beat, because he's not going to learn from winning, he's going to learn from losing. And his, the positive energy he could muster inside of himself to then go and improve until he could beat that person, then find something else that would beat him, and then say something else because he ended up fighting aliens. There's a new movie out in the cinema. I've probably been and gone. I haven't seen it yet, but it's good. So is that real life? Do you get that sort of stuff, or is it a long road from building kids up after a defeat to come back and go again?
The great thing about competition is I say to my kids, all I want you to do is go out there and do your best. If you win, awesome. If you lose, awesome. The great thing about losing is that you will be submitted by a submission, and you'll need to come back, get on the mats, work out how you got submitted. Or if you didn't escape a position in time, you need to come back, get on the mats, train again, and figure it out. It's overcoming that ego to understand that, winning isn't everything. Losing is actually a good thing in jiu-jitsu because you get to figure out where you went wrong.
Such good advice. So you say your kids, your students have competed. How often do these competitions happen?
4 times a year we compete, and we've actually never ever walked away without anything less than a bronze medal in the weight divisions. We mainly get gold and silver, but we train hard, and I think the thing about our club is that we train takedowns, and a lot of the kids clubs don't train takedowns at their clubs, but we train takedowns, so I guess that's an advantage. But we also train 3 days a week, and a lot of the big clubs, the real clubs, as you would say, that you have to pay for, they only train a couple of times, maybe once or twice a week for kids. So I try to offer a really extensive program for my students to get good and get good fast. And yesterday I had a year 8 student, and one of the other students just said to me, just shark tanking Mr. Bright. And shark tanking is when you put the student in the middle and he has to fight every student on the mat one after the other. And it was amazing to see that this kid went through every single student, and he just didn't give up. I've managed to get through his head from a young age that don't give up, push through, no matter how tired you are, just keep going.
That's fantastic, so good. So we've talked a little bit about the opportunities you present to younger people. You've mentioned your progression through some belts yourself, so let's just focus a little bit on how you find training for you, and is there some sort of mentor program in your life that you get from a club or something yourself? Obviously you're going to beat most of the kids. That's right, Luke Smith, he'll beat you down big time. Or is there, do you get enough from that, or do you need to go outside? Do you have your own mentor that helps prepare you?
Yeah, I have a mentor. He's almost like a big brother to me, even though he's only a few years older than me. He's it's kind of like Mr. Miyagi in the sense that he's really wise. Like he gets jiu-jitsu. For him, it's simple. He just 100% gets it. But he has seen me go through the ups and downs with the ego. This is why I talk about ego. He's seen me go through the ups and downs with the ego, and he's made me push past, and he's helped me work through it. And I'm on that verge between purple belt and brown belt at the moment, and he says I'm technically there, but I just need to work on the mental game. So back on the mats, work on the mental game, and just wait for the next thing to happen. Don't wait for the belt. Just get on the mats and get good.
Broadcasting all over Perth, Australia and the world. This is Youth Jam Radio, home to your favourite tracks.
So rise, breaking the dark, piercing the night, can make you shine.
This is Life Changers with Ian and Brock on Youth Jam Radio.
Light, a radiant light, you were made to rise.
Fantastic. So there you go. It's the cycle that needs to be in place while you're still considered to be a teacher, a guru. You can still have your own mentor and be building yourself up elsewhere, and that's the balance that we need in life. Very wise words there from Matt. So competitions for you, do you compete in competitions as well?
No, I've stopped competing. I focus on coaching. I like to put all my time into the coaching. I quickly discovered when I started jiu-jitsu that I really loved coaching. I loved seeing you teaching someone a technique, and then they pick it up quickly and then they use it. It's kind of like teaching in class. You teach a kid how to do a certain shot and they come back and they've nailed the shot, and it's like, wow, man, that's just awesome. So yeah, coaching's for me. I have a lot of students that like to compete, and I love to be there for them. I am a different coach on the mats to other coaches. When you see me at competition, a lot of the other coaches will be screaming at the students, and I will sit back, watch what they're doing, film what they're doing, and I always tell my students, listen to the other coaches. If the other coach is telling you to go, they're going to go for a submission, well, block that submission or move from that position. So I tell them to listen to the other coach, because the coach is always screaming. So it's really actually easy to move around and to listen to what they're telling you to do.
So, can you catch a fly with chopsticks?
I've never tried.
Maybe I can teach you how to use chopsticks first, and we can try that one later. So let's just talk about the skills that can go from, so the mental game you talked about, it's a big part of it. How can these kids use those social skills in their everyday life with other kids?
You know, I've had a couple of kids that were students here that were being bullied, you know, having a hard time. And they came into jiu-jitsu, and the amount of confidence, even after their first competition, they weren't picked on anymore. There was none of that. It really builds character in these kids. It builds strength in them and a belief in themselves, that they know if they had to get into an altercation, that they would be able to, you know, help themselves. The thing about street fights is 7 times out of 10, the fight's going to go to the ground. So you need to know how to protect yourself on the ground. But I've just seen massive changes and growth in students in a really short amount of time that jiu-jitsu does. It's a life changer.
Absolutely, and that's a good way to move on towards the end of our show. But something you said really struck true with me then. It's you know, you're using it as a way to change attitudes, build confidence, do those sorts of things, not to actually teach them to fight in conflict situation. It's more about that. It's the discipline. It's about the avoidance rather than seeking this out, which is, that's just fantastic advice. So they're building self-confidence. They're building a better mental state, which is, making them, I guess, more assertive, and people aren't picking on them as part of the process, not actually trying to engage in physical combat, which is just fantastic advice there as well. So, maybe BJJ is a sport for you if you need some of those pickups to be part of a club, to be part of a group of people, a part of a team, and to get that sort of mentoring in your life. One bit of advice, Matt, that's been given to you that you could pass on to anyone. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Piece of advice. Just don't let your ego get in the way of, continuing with something. Just keep pushing forward, keep moving forward, and
Beautiful words to finish there from Matt Bright. Thanks for joining us this evening. Remember, if you have a jingle for our 60 seconds of power for next week, email that through to inquiries@youthjamradio.com. We'll select a winner, and you can award yourself your own prize if you are that winner. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week for Life Changes.